My name is David Fleming from Disciples United, and we're studying how to handle disappointment successfully in our walk with the Lord. Now, today we're going to be reading in the Old Testament in the book of 1 Samuel about a woman that was grieving that she could not bear children. We read all about this in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Her name was Hannah. Hannah's husband was Elkanah, and then we read in verse 2 Elkanah had two wives. One was called Hannah, and the other was Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. And as we go on throughout the first chapter, we find that Peninnah, just because Elkanah favored Hannah and he treated her better than he did Peninnah, Peninnah just made life miserable for Hannah. She taunted her. She made fun of her that she couldn't have children. And then we read in verse 6, because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. So first of all, we find that Hannah is grieving because she's not able to have any children. This was the desire of every Israelite woman to have children, but she could not have any. But yet Peninnah had more than one, and she just taunted and irritated Hannah, making life miserable for her. I can just imagine that Hannah was severely disappointed that she didn't have children, but then she's also disappointed that life is so miserable to her because of the taunting and the irritation that Peninnah was giving to her life. But this was all in God's plan. Not that Peninnah would irritate her, but that she didn't have any children yet. What was God up to? God was driving Hannah not just to pray, because she was doing that, but to pray with desperation. Listen to this in verse 10. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to you, to the Lord, for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. Now, this paragraph is full of information that tells us what God's up to. First of all, he is driving Hannah to desperate prayer. He wants her not just to pray, but he wants her to pray with all she's got, with desperation. And she did that. But he also wanted Hannah to pray for, specifically, a son, because God had a reason. God had a plan that he wanted to set in place. And then he wanted Hannah to vow, to make a promise to God, that she would give her son to the Lord. And what this meant, that she was going to not raise her son. She was going to feed him and then wean him when he was just a little youngster to the priest, for the priest to raise up. Now, this was going to take a large amount of faith, y'all, because the priest who was in leadership at this time was not really living for the Lord as he should. He was allowing his sons to get away with sinful things and sexual immorality in God's presence. So Eli was not really a good priest at all. But here Hannah was making a promise. Lord, I will bring my son to the priest to raise, and he'll be a Nazirite all of his life. Now, Nazirite was a special vow that you could make to the Lord, that you were going to be separated even from that which was considered normal Jewish living. You're not going to drink wine. You're not going to ever cut your hair. You are dedicated to the Lord 24/7. And sometimes the Nazirite vow was for life. And with Samuel's case, it was going to be for life. So the Lord got Hannah to the place where she got desperate in prayer. So desperate that she made this vow to the Lord. Lord, I'll give my son to you, and he'll be a Nazirite all of his days. Well, it came to pass. The Lord granted her her request, gave her a son. She named him Samuel, which is very interesting because Samuel means heard by God. So for all of his days, Samuel, that became probably one of the most important priests in the Old Testament, because Samuel was used by God to anoint David as the king of Israel and was a great influence in David's life. Samuel was a powerful prophet in his time, but he was birthed out of prayer, desperate prayer. And he was a Nazirite, specially set apart unto the Lord, not only as a priest, but as a prophet, given unto the Lord, birthed by prayer. You know, all disappointments aren't bad. Sometimes they get us to the place that we need to be, where we're willing to make a promise to the Lord and follow through with it, just like Hannah did. So there's times that when we meet disappointment, that we really need to just say, stop. Hold on a minute. Lord, are you trying to teach me something? Are you trying to get something out of me? Is this disappointment driving me to a place where you want me to be so that I'll pray desperately and make a promise to you that's going to change all of history? Well, that was the case with Hannah. But that might also be what God's doing in your life, driving you to a place of desperate prayer. But there's more to learn about how to handle disappointments. So join with me tomorrow and we'll learn from another person in the Word of God and how they learn how to successfully handle disappointments. So I'll see you tomorrow.